with a stuffed llama. This is, ooh, I've got, second, got my computer sitting here beside me making noises. Let's turn it down and get rolling. We're going to be talking about, of course, the other appliance in our lives that makes a ton of noise, our brains, and how we navigate giving hugs to our brains. Marlos Morale, welcome. It's good to see you. How you doing today? We're going to be, how's your brain going? Is it making noises? Brains can also just sit and be quiet. It's, I think, is an important thing to understand on this journey. Yeah, I mean, brains naturally throw up lots of stuff, but through things like practicing meditation and just learning how to interact with experiences, we can teach our brains how to be quiet with us. Christian, hello, Isabel. Everything is horrible, but there is a stuffed llama. So, I mean, that's amazing. Welcome. Other things are the way they are. I am I'm in a very high place, of course. So I really notice there's even less oxygen. It's like that time we did the stream in Bogota, and I was just getting used to being in a higher altitude. Oh no, Marlos. So the brain needs a refill on rational juice. I will have no rational juice to share. I find that taking care of our mental health is irrational and unreasonable. It's about identifying the actions that are useful to us and then doing those. Because it really helped me to see I could always think of a rational, reasonable reason to do compulsions. And even just engaging in that like rational debate with my brain always ended up with more compulsions and doing things that were really unhelpful to me. So it helped to just start to do the actions that were useful to me unreasonably. Little Miss Beats, hey, welcome. Everybody today for our tea. So it's kind of in a thermos um, that I carry with me. Today's tea is Munya tea. It's like peppermint. It's part of the mint family, and it kind of looks like mint, but it's not. But it tastes sharp, like peppermint, and it's to help with the altitude as well. So and it tastes great. It's like really sharp and fresh. It it tastes like a mountain stream. So speaking of mountain streams, what we explore in Brain Tech Support time, Brain Tech Support Live, uh, are any questions or challenges or exercises that people are working on as they, live very human lives, which involve a lot of challenges around us, but also inside of us. And we look at how to do the things we really care about while making space for those challenges. I just had breakfast. Excuse me. And there's breakfast, I can tell is caught in my throat. So I'm trying to like wash it down so I can speak. I think it's on its way. I think I've seen a couple llamas so far. There actually are like you just run into alpacas just like out on the street. They're with people, I think. Although I'd love to be in a place where the alpacas they just run the town. They hang out. They do the things they got to do. Alpaca things. Pop up kitty, hello. Love yourself the way you wish they did. Excuse me. Greetings, Earthlings. Taj said, "You think you're experiencing the recovery headaches, migraines I mentioned before? A good sign, I guess. It's it's really useful and to say to everybody else here, as you're making changes, because one of the experiences will naturally just kind of react to its physical discomfort. It's just so common that as you're cutting out maybe compulsions around thoughts or feelings, that the brain is going to jump to physical discomfort because we'll react to it. We'll go, oh, but this is real. I've got to do something. I've got to fix it. And so it really helped me on the journey of recovery to just start to look at skills for engaging with uncomfortable experiences, right? So it might be an uncomfortable mental experience like a thought, and an uncomfortable emotional experience like anxiety, but it might be an uncomfortable physical experience like a headache. No tomorrow. Good brains to all, indeed. Oh, Isabel, yeah, you're an expert in this. Isn't that great? Maybe I'll choke on my granola mid live stream, and we'll just have to deal with it. These things happen. Neon purple high. Marlos, he said, still trying to combat my phone addiction while needing a phone for daily living, like recipes, wanting to support my mom. My father passed away, being available for her, inspiration for my hobbies. But there's a couple things there. So having your phone with you, if your mom wants to get in touch with you, she can. And if you want to share something with your mom, you can. But that doesn't mean you have to be on your phone all the time. Like you don't have to be checking, like, oh, did they reach out? Did they send something? What do I do? Same with recipes and inspiration for hobbies. Recipes is actually the example I often use around this. If you're about to cook something, right? Like, say, I'm gonna go make cookies. I'm like, I don't know if I have all the ingredients I need. I'm gonna go look at what ingredients I have in the kitchen. I'm going to look on my phone, maybe what's a recipe. So, okay, do I have the things required for this recipe? If I don't, I'm gonna go buy them. I'm gonna take action. If I do, I'm gonna make the cookies right then. So it's tied to action. But if somebody's like just looking up recipes online, like they're just like scrolling through Instagram or something, oh, like I could make that. Oh, I can make that. Oh, I can make that. Yeah, that's just, I mean, you're not making anything then. Same with hobbies, like inspiration for hobbies. I'd be very suspicious of that. Um, so, for example, I'm a writer. Also, I make like cartoons and videos and all sorts of things like that. I if I'm not making something, I don't need to be like researching or looking for inspiration. So it really helped me to tie it to action. If I'm going to give something and I don't know a piece of information I need to give, then I'm going to go and get the piece of information on my phone. But if I'm not giving, I don't need to be there. And so the same applies to social media. Because I could just be on social media all the time, but that's not necessary. If I'm giving something and sharing something, then I can be there. If I'm, yeah, so I'll set aside time to go and answer people's questions and things like that. But if I'm not going to give something, then I don't need to be there. Oh no, thank you so much for the donation. Oh, thank you so much for the support. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming by today. I hope you're having a good morning. Yeah, Marlo. So it can help actually if there's some reason we do need to be available to our phones, then seeing like actually notifications we want to turn on, and then practicing choosing when we check. So being able to have your phone, have the notifications on, hear a notification, and say, okay, well, I'm doing something right now. I want to finish this. And in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I'm going to then look at the notification and I'm going to respond. But yeah, then because seeing too, because if you know that, hey, you want to be available to your mother, but your mother only reaches out by calling you, for instance, then yeah, you just need to pay attention if the phone rings. But if it's not a notification of the phone ring, then yeah, you don't have to do anything there. And I see you mentioned like references for drawing, but then too, are you about to draw? Then you need a reference. If you're not about to draw, you don't need to be searching for references. Yes, no tomorrow. We did have a duck. I still have the duck. It's just in another room right now. Today we have I don't know if there's any kind of debugging tool that people can do with llamas, but absolutely, the debugging duck is great. It's useful to think about using the same principles with a debugging duck for how we debug mental health challenges. Oh, oh yeah, no tomorrow. Yeah, you're asking how was I planning to use them? It's that. Starting to consider, oh yeah, like how it's because it's so useful. It's one of the advantages even of, working with somebody on our mental health and fitness is for the same reason as the debugging doc, just to explain out loud what it is we are planning on doing in life or how we are planning to interact with experiences. Often the simple act of just talking it out is really useful to us to see, oh, wait a second, is that? Because one of the things I find beneficial of that is because we can start to look at beliefs. Very often we get stuck on unhelpful beliefs and we just take them for granted. But when we start to tell the story, we can start to consider the beliefs and the assumptions in the story. And then we can ask ourselves, are those actually useful to me? Are other things possible? And that's a technique too. Yeah, it's totally from the same world as the debugging duck. It was a technique from working with digital media companies, software companies, and so on. So often we get in our heads what we think should happen, and we just go to it, right? Say even on a team, people just think, oh, this is the thing that has to happen. When we have to start to tell the story out loud, we start to consider maybe there are other possibilities. Maybe that thing I just said actually doesn't make sense when I hear it and say it out loud. Mhm. So yeah, it's useful to get a get a toy in your life, or a professional. Mental health professionals also very similar to toys, and then talk to them. Isabel, yes, can you remind us why stopping phone checking is useful? Yeah, because it's useful because it is the same compulsion as everything else. Right? Compulsions are patterns, and so if we get this urge, like, ooh, I have an uncertainty, and we automatically react to it, grab our phone, even if it's just something like, I don't know, what's the difference between llamas and alpacas? We're like, oh yeah, I better go find out, and we react. We teach the brain that we should react automatically to uncertainties. So then when the brain, right, throws up an uncertainty like, ooh, what if you die? It's very difficult not to react to that and start chasing it. Because if we react to the uncertainty, ooh, what's the difference between alpacas and llamas? Which, maybe we don't see as threatening. Some people may see it as very threatening. But if we react to that and it's not threatening, how can we not react to the uncertainty that is threatening? And so just by having that practice in our lives of very automatically reacting to the phone, we are just training the brain. Like, do compulsions automatically. And it also then makes it much more difficult to cut out compulsions that are more stressful, right? It creates a logic. Seeing like the brain's very logical. It's like if you need to know every detail about llamas, how can you not know every detail about whether we live in a simulation engineered by llamas? Brains. Pom Pom Kitty said, any tips on how to handle relationships better? I feel like I'm too impulsive sometimes. Also, there are some relationships that are always scarred. How to deal with them? Hmm. That's the thing. Like, I find it really useful around relationships, and yeah, whether it's romantic or just interpersonal, like family relationships, to identify a set of values just for that relationship and look at here's what's important to me and here's what I want to give. And then, yeah, like they might be scarred. They might always have a bad experience. Like, if you, for example, were like, oh, I love llamas and I want to go talk to them, but then you went up to a llama and you're like, oh, llama, you're so wonderful. But then it spit at you or like it bit you. And then we're like, oh no, llamas are always scarred for me. It's possible. We'll always have that memory and that experience. But then being able to say, you know what, even though I'm like fixing my llama's hair right, or it's tassels. I guess it's decorative tassels. The if you want to give love to that llama in whatever way is safe for you and makes sense for you, then it's about saying, hey, here's what I want to give. At the same time, I understand there's going to be that pain and that memory from that past experience, and that's something I'm gonna navigate as I do this. Marlos, I see that. Yeah, you said your mom only calls. Exactly. So you can just have the ringer on. You don't have to have notifications on like social media or your email. Tona, yeah, thank you for the donation earlier. I see your question here. Said, I have a question. When I sit down and I'm working at the computer, my brain is checking my belly, like we need to reduce its size or it's contaminated. It's very common compulsion. What would you like to give your attention to? And how can you love your belly? So we do get caught up in this like contamination pattern, just like you noticed there, where we judge things on our body and then we're like, oh, I've got to fix this and clean this. It is so much more useful to love ourselves unreasonably and aggressively, even if something on our body is going to change, as our bodies are always changing. It's still going to be useful to like it because yeah, it just ends up distracting us from what we actually want to be doing, and then it just becomes a barrier. So and we often come up with body focused compulsions when we're doing things like sitting down to work or something like that. And so it's useful to, because you know it's going to happen. I find it useful to identify, hey, if I'm about to sit down, I know my brain's going to want to go and judge this as a problem and it's going to want to check it. What do I want to give my attention to instead? And so actually having something you want to take your brain to rather than just sitting down and be like, oh, I'm going to do some work. Oh, how am I going to get started? And the brain's like, oh, I know a thing we can fix. Boom. And it's going to go to checking the belly. So you really know where you want to take it. It helped me to see the brain as a puppy. So if we just walk outside with the puppy and we haven't kind of guided the puppy in a particular direction, of course the puppy's going to run around. And the puppy is going to dig up stuff we don't like. It's going to maybe dig up some gross thing from the past, or it's going to bite on something in the present, like us. It's going to judge it. And so it really helps to know where we want to take the puppy from the start. And then, yeah, it may run off to go and do something, but if we know what we want to take it to, then we can bring it back to that. So you said, here's the thing, here's the really interesting thing I want to do on the computer right now. Let's check this out. And then you notice the brain wanting to check stuff and you just take it to that much more interesting thing. Rachel, I see your comment there, but do you have a question about that? Maharashtra, yeah, this is a cute llama. Does everybody understand why this is a llama and not an alpaca? And you can tell, I know some people may be like, I don't know, but one, it's the super long hair, but also these ears. These are totally llama ears. And yes, I understand it's a stuffed toy. It's not a real llama. Just like your thoughts aren't real. Okay, Lala, I'm reading your comments here. So it's very common, yeah, to have, anxieties and worries. And do you have a question about that? Squidge, he said, I think people can confuse have any experience with ignore any experience while doing what you value. Yeah, how would you explain the difference to someone? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, people get caught up on the like, oh, so you're saying like, oh, I'm gonna ignore what's happening, and seeing it's about making space for what's really there. Like we still have that experience and have those feelings and bring them along. And so the way I sometimes I describe it is like wallpaper. Like I'm in a white room right now, but if there was wallpaper on the room, it would be part of the experience, and it wouldn't be about me. Like I wouldn't be ignoring it. Well, we're doing this. I'm like, oh, I'm not looking at the wallpaper. I'm doing this. It would be there, and I can see it and be like, hey, this is there. But yeah, what do I want to do right now? Here's the thing I want to do. But yeah, I want to do the live stream around any wallpaper around. I mean, a llama again, a llama toy. It's not an alpaca, so I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not good. It'd be way better if it was an alpaca, but it can be here, and I can interact with it. And so, yeah, it's hard to describe in the abstract. Like usually, because that question comes up a lot. Like if I'm working with people around stuff like this, so usually we get into like the very practical elements of what it's going to look like to say like to have thoughts. Well, they eat a meal. Maybe they're sitting down to have tacos and they're like, oh, what do I do if there are intrusive thoughts? And looking at, well, like the thoughts can be there. Well, we also have our tacos. We're saying this seems to come up most around health related experiences. Yeah, and I don't know, do you have a specific example? Because like the one that springs to mind that for me would be pain. So even like we were talking about headaches at the start, but yeah, and health related experiences, if we have something like an illness, but even like a really bad injury, so there's a lot of pain, it's not about pretending that the pain doesn't exist. The pain is there, and we're going to incorporate that into the context of what we're doing and maybe what we're choosing to do. So yeah, it's not about ignoring the pain, because if we know, or even say like there was an injury where like we really can't use our legs at the moment, like I don't know, something was broken, and we don't go, well, I'm gonna go running because I can have the experience of my legs breaking again. No, like we're gonna say, look, yeah, like given the context in which I find myself right now, which is that I can't use my legs, and that's very painful to do certain things. What do I value doing? Understanding that I'm also not just going to avoid any pain, because if I try to do that, well, then I won't get to do anything. So it is navigating that line where it's like, well, I'm not going to spend all day fighting the pain and trying to avoid the pain. At the same time, I'm going to consider the context of that pain as I do things that matter to me. I'm also going to adjust the pressure I put on myself, or how I set those goals, excuse me, based on the fact that I can't use my legs in the way that I want to, or the fact that there's something caught in my throat. So we navigate it. Isabella, absolutely. You should be, I totally agree. Be unnerved by the llama. It's got quite, it's got quite the puffy face. It's very cute. No tomorrow. I like that idea. So you should launch a TV format called Brain Nightmares. Maybe like Kitchen Nightmare style, where you show up in full Gordon Ramsay style and discover the worst compulsions on the market. So I find for a bunch of years, because I don't think Kitchen Nightmares, they make new episodes. For a bunch of years when they were making new episodes of Kitchen Nightmares, I found that show one of the best mental health shows available, because it so often, right, the kitchen nightmare was just about a person's bunch of compulsions. Either they had some things that they were chasing, or they were afraid to do something that's useful, or they had a whole bunch of unhelpful beliefs. They would make a whole bunch of assumptions. They get caught up in all sorts of controlling. Kitchen Nightmares was a great mental health show to look at how that application of compulsions can wreck your business. And then so often, right, it helping the restaurant do well was about stepping away from the things they thought they wanted to do, and actually starting to look at like, how do we do a restaurant well? And right, we talk about that stuff all the time, like stepping away from like just chasing after what our brain throws up, and instead looking at, how do I do this thing well? and those become our values. And we notice uncertainty, we notice anxiety, we notice maybe insecurity. We think, oh, well, I wanted to come up with the idea, or I wanted to do, you know, like a seafood themed, I don't know, like restaurant in the desert with accordions. And like I would play my accordion music every night while people ate bad frozen seafood in the middle of the desert. And like there were always people doing things like that on Kitchen Nightmares. Pom Pom Kitty said sometimes we really like and trust someone and we believe that they're genuinely good, but then they hurt us in the most terrible way. How do we move on from that? So, with all sorts of experiences like that, I think it's useful to look at what do we mean by move on from that? We can't not move on from that just because of physics. Time is moving and space. We have moved on. But then it's about looking at what are we going to do in the present around that experience, around that pain. So actually kind of it's really useful to connect this to like the physical pain we were just talking about with squidge. So there might be real physical pain there. And so moving on doesn't mean we pretend it doesn't exist. We're hurt and that's sensitive and that's painful and that's here right now. But we can give a hug to that and understand why that hurts and also look at what it is we want to do. Because if we just sit there and go, oh, well, this is painful and I hate this pain and I don't like this pain and why is this pain? And oh, and then we're like time traveling, like this should have happened differently in the past, etc. Whether it's an accident or it's a relationship. Yeah, not that those two things are the same. A car accident and a relationship. Sometimes they are similar. But if we're caught up in like, oh, I should have fixed that, I should have changed that, again, I mean, we're just going to kind of be stuck there. But moving forward doesn't have to mean no pain, right? We incorporate the pain into the context of where we're at, but we are going to take steps ahead, in part because we are moving ahead. We have like very factually moved on, but it's whether or not we are going to bring our brain to join us in that, or we're going to spend our time, you know, obsessing about the past or just trying to hate on the pain. Max Thorson, you said, how can you deal with false memories? I have a video about this that includes bananas. I had a banana for breakfast this morning. It might have been a false memory. If you check it out here on YouTube, I think it's called OCD False Real Memories. And you'll see in the thumbnail, I'm holding a banana. Sarabja, thank you. I'm glad you found the intrusive thoughts video useful. Oh, Max, did you enjoyed my book? Thank you for checking out the book. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Sarabja, you have a comment in the chat that just says my question is, but then there's no question after that. So I don't know if you posted it and it got lost. But yeah, if you can yeah, post your question. Yes, Squid said what I was thinking about were a lot of questions on the Discord coming up around when do I see the doctor? That's not a challenge I have, so I wondered how to articulate it. Yeah, what I always tell people around that is to like decide, like pick how you're going to decide when to see the doctor, and then to explore that. Because yeah, otherwise it always just gets into like, well, like what about this and what about that and so on. And so just finding in many ways like exactly what a doctor does, right? Like a lot often in medicine there'll be a series of algorithms. Like if this happens, then you do this. If this happens, you refer to this. If this happens, you get this test. And it's coming up with your own treatment algorithm for you. And so you just say, hey, like yeah, and just like in medical algorithms, they're not based on 100% absolute certainty, but based on the research, like, well, generally at this point, if this happens, you do this. And so we start to set that for ourselves. And so like that's how I decide when I go to the doctor or not now, because I used to have all sorts of compulsions around health and illness. Mm. Prince Vegetas, you brought up something here that's really key. He said, the biggest mistake I made after recovering with ERP was basing everything on how I defeated my OCD. So just going for a walk, I would remember defeating OCD. It makes me relapse. Any advice? So first of all, the great thing is you notice how it makes you relapse because it is just the compulsions. And this is why even one of the, I think the most recent video I have on my YouTube channel is about walking off the battlefield. And that's so important for precisely the reason you mentioned. OCD is about hating on a bad thing that could cause bad things. And so it's so important to see that taking care of our mental health can't be the same thing. So if we do ERP because we're like, oh, I'm going to do these exercises, like I'm going to repeat scripts over and over and over again to get rid of a bad thought. And then say like we do this over and eventually, the thought goes away. And thanks to confirmation bias, we're like, yeah, me doing this ritual got rid of the thought. But then the brain is just going to move on to some other bad thing, like OCD or relapse is very common. And I'll go, oh, okay, so if we had to do something over and over again to get rid of the bad thought, what are you going to do over and over again to get rid of relapse? And then because then we're not sure, we're like, well, what if I do relapse? And then we start checking and we don't want to do it and we put it at the center of everything and we're like, oh, I can't relapse. We've already relapsed. Right? We're just putting some fear of some bad thing in charge of our actions. So it's really useful to build your mental health practice around things you want to keep. And then we just keep giving more time and energy to those things we want to keep. As long as it revolves around defeating a bad thing, the brain will always supply a new bad thing to defeat. There'll always be new enemies on the battlefield. And we've got to walk off the battlefield and build something amazing. And even see it as like, it's not even like walking off the battlefield. It's just here are the great things I'm building in my life. And I'm going to give my time and energy to them. Styled by stickers. He said, I'm blaming myself so much less now, but I'm realizing how much is outside of my control. Someone else yelling at me, my cortisol rising in response, feeling tearful, and it makes me feel immature. I keep feeling like a fish out of water. Not sure I have a question, but any compassion or shared similar experiences? So, one of the things I find really important is that, yeah, in many ways, when we're struggling with mental illness, the brain is just categorizing things, right? We've got that judgment machinery, just like this is good, that's bad, this is mature, that's immature, this is going well, that's going bad, this is OCD, that is not. It's useful to start to also look at how we practice non judgment with ourselves because we'll easily turn that judgment machinery on our feelings, on our thoughts, on our actions, on our natural physical responses, like getting tearful. And then we're immediately, oh, I shouldn't do that. Or me being vulnerable right now, it's bad and it means stuff. And it's so useful just to start to explore being kind to ourselves. Something I've been asking people a lot lately is if you were a colleague of yourself, so say you were working together at the same place, what would you think about how you treat yourself? Because so often it's like imagine if you're in a meeting and somebody turns to you and they're like, "Oh, why are you doing that? Oh, that was a stupid idea. Oh, do you think people really want to hear that right now?" Or like, "Oh, you're not being mature enough." Right? That level of criticism. What we would see that critical person is just like really unpleasant. We'd try to get them out of the company as quickly as possible, hopefully if it's a healthy company. But we do that to ourselves all the time. We don't give ourselves responsibility. We're like, oh, I really want to go to do this thing, but oh, I'm not ready yet. That's the same as, we're in that meeting and we're like, oh, I've always wanted to go and lead this project. And the person beside us is like, you're not ready for that. You're going to screw it up. Everybody's going to hate you. We do that to ourselves all the time. And you can just imagine, right? Imagine if a manager was constantly doing that to an employee. That employee is not going to have much trust in themselves. We do that to ourselves all the time. So, how do you want to give yourself trust? And how do you want to be a really great colleague to yourself? So, Abjad, yeah, he said, is my comment visible now? No. Um, no, you must be using a word because I'm on my phone. So, I think I don't have all the moderation tools that I would have on a computer. There must be something in your comment that is getting automatically blocked by YouTube. So maybe, yeah, look in there and see if there's any words. I think some of the words it blocks are just random. Like, I think it doesn't allow you to say like jerk, things like that. So look, if there's any word in there that you think like YouTube might automatically block, yeah, maybe try taking it out and try again. The J. Cool Band said, any tips on when everything feels worthless? I try to keep doing what I know I value, but I have to force myself and start resenting doing them. And if not, I feel guilty for doing them. The there's probably a bunch of things to unpack there. Uh, that like I would have a ton of questions. If somebody brought that up, always around like things feel worthless. I always have a ton of questions about that because even that like why there's all sorts of assumptions there. Like why even should it feel a particular way? Why is there checking going on around how it's feeling? But then also, yeah, why are you judging yourself and feeling guilty if you're not doing particular things? And so that, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff to explore there. So oh, no, the llama just fell over. So yeah, if you're, working with a professional, it'd be great to, yeah, explore some of the beliefs and assumptions and the checking that's going on around that stuff. Oh, Marlos, great point for Sarabjot. Yeah, if your comment's too long, also if comments are too long, the thing that happens with YouTube on mobile is that the comments constantly disappear. So I also, if your comment is too long, it'll be very difficult for me to read because it'll just keep disappearing. Ah, squidge. Actually, yeah. There you go. Like the idea of calling it an algorithm. Yeah, there you go. Familiar with medical algorithms, like, and also right, like the research that goes into that. It's not totally clear cut, and then a committee makes a decision on okay, like yeah, based on what we've seen generally, here's what we're gonna try, but we'll always be open to incorporating new research to change the algorithm in the future. Yeah, love yourself the way you wish they did. A great point here to styled by stickers saying so be a fish out of water. Dean, oh, thank you so much for the donation. It's good to see you. Question you asked here. You said going through a breakup. Oh, okay. Llama wishes you well. Said, I know that I have to act according to my values, even though I have intrusive thoughts or urges or sensations, but it's really hard. How does one accept just feeling bad? Actually, that's a great question to ask, is to think, because so often there are these human experiences like breakups that do just feel bad. And so I find it useful there to look at like what would we do for somebody else? And often it's somebody else who's maybe a kid, say we were babysitting a kid, and yeah, something really bad happened to them. And so of course they feel bad. So one, we're not gonna tell them like don't feel bad, like suck it up, stop crying. We're gonna understand, hey, like that thing that happened to you, it does feel bad. And then how are we going to care for them? How are we going to understand yeah, like they feel really bad right now. So we probably can't, force them to do all sorts of things they're not going to want to do. But how do we help them to still take care of themselves? How do we create a space to take care of them and to make it okay to feel bad? To talk about that, but also help them go and do things that they're really going to enjoy. And yet, doing things they're going to enjoy doesn't mean not feeling bad. While they do the thing they enjoy, they're going to be reminded of that painful experience. Like we were talking, I don't know if you caught earlier, we were talking about pain. The pain is there. It's not about pretending the pain doesn't exist, but how do I make space for that pain? And maybe, yeah, I'm also doing something that might feel good, and that's going to feel weird to both feel really terrible and feel good. And the brain's going to want to be like, oh, like pick one, which is it, we shouldn't have this feeling, etc. But seeing, no, like this is a very human experience. We can have all of those feelings at once. We can feel bad, we can feel guilty, we can feel happy, we can laugh at a joke, we can also cry a bit because that joke reminds us of something now that's very painful. And it's, yeah, it's seeing how can you support yourself while having those difficult human experiences. Yeah. So yeah, please do support yourself. And sometimes, yeah, that support feels difficult. But it's also knowing, oh, okay, if I do this, I know this feels difficult, but if I do this, I'm gonna appreciate it. It's gonna make space for having that difficult experience right now. Yeah. Squidge. Yeah, you said, and so yeah, the thing with the algorithms I find really useful. In some ways, thinking of values is with a lot of situations, it helped me to come up with very specific values. But really, yeah, those are those algorithms where I say, like, oh, okay, like every time this happened, this is how I'm going to act. Like an example I can think of there. Yeah, so like you mentioned communication there. He said, look, sometimes I have trouble deciding if I want to communicate about something to someone else. I could have an algorithm. Yeah, it's like one of the things I came up with an algorithm for was just noticing like I would often do a whole bunch of things, like work tasks that I could get somebody else to do, but always my brain would like, oh, well, that'll take longer or that won't, work out as well and so on. But just identifying a whole bunch of work tasks where I say, like, look, if this comes up, I automatically, now I don't even consider whether I'm going to do it myself. It's just if that type of task comes up, I have to automatically go and, like, hire somebody on Upwork or Fiverr to do it. And it's just, yeah, it's just there. And then there's no, and it's to cut out that debating. So we see what are those things that we spend tons of time debating and ruminating on in our heads. Okay, how do we have an algorithm so we just cut it out and we just immediately can take action? Neon purple. Yeah, I see your comment there, but do you have a question about that? Marlo's great point. We are all fish out of water. Oh, Jung Jung, thank you. I'm glad you find it useful. Mm. Marzina. So I have horrible intrusive thoughts, constantly rechecking. I've been having trouble remembering and absorbing the information. So also I'm reading your book and I love it. I'm glad you're enjoying the book. So I would go after the checking. So that checking and also seeing that trying to remember things and absorb information, really common checking compulsion. We're right because we're trying to chase certainty. The more we try to get that certainty, of course, the more the brain is going to be like, oh, maybe you don't remember that correctly. So then we'll do more checking. So you're seeing a lot of checking compulsions there. So yeah, like check out the chapter in the book on checking. So there's some exercises there on cutting out those checking compulsions. Oh, Isabella, I see. So jerk is not blocked. Oh, Sal, you said, thank you so much for helping. Oh, I'm glad to be helpful. You said you recently compared OCD to an addiction where the obsessions are the lows and the compulsions are chasing the high. My life has improved a lot. Yeah, I'm glad you found that helpful. It's really useful. Oh, and thank you so much for the donation. Yeah, I appreciate the support. Yeah, I will put it towards coffee or some delicious tea from the mountains. Yeah, it's really useful to see them as compulsions because then we say, look, yeah, like I'm just not because also approaching it as an addiction really useful because we'll often see it as like something we have to manage and like, oh, I'm gonna like gradually wind down these compulsions with it, which is just like somebody saying, oh, well, like I'm addicted to alcohol, so yeah, like I got out vodka, but I'm still like I'm gonna drink whiskey this week, and just no, like the nothing has changed. The compulsions are still happening. Yes, love yourself. Great point about fish. Some became dolphins. Oh, so Srabjot, I see now. I can see your comment. He said how to stop constantly reassuring yourself that your thoughts are just thoughts, and no matter how much your logical mind is convinced that the intrusive thoughts bothering you are observed. And so actually, I would go after like even just what you just did right there, like that. No matter that, trying to convince ourselves that it's absurd is going to encourage the brain to give you more of them, and starting to see, yeah, like so it's just not. It's like we don't. It doesn't. It doesn't matter whether we see it as absurd, see it as irrational, reasonable, wrong, etc. It really helped me to just see all thoughts are just thoughts. So it's not like it doesn't require the reassuring. It's about shifting the focus to like, I'm just going to do actions. Because if you're trying to reassure yourself that thoughts are thoughts because you want to be certain they're not real, then of course that's like that'll be something you have to keep doing. So maybe, yeah, a different way to approach it would just be to say, well, because you're not going to spend time on thoughts anymore, because they're just thoughts. So like you don't have to tell yourself that, right? Just like I don't have to like keep reassuring, oh, this is not a real llama, right? If I have to spend time on that, it's going to imply to the brain that it could be a real llama. Instead, what do I want to give my time and energy to instead? And so just starting to explore that, you don't have to check thoughts. And one of the things to look at there is looking at how you interact with thoughts you like or thoughts you see as like rational and real and reasonable. Because if you're interacting with a lot of thoughts you like, it's very difficult to then turn around and deliberate, oh, but not these thoughts. Those thoughts aren't real. Because then, of course, you're going to have to keep reassuring yourself of that because the brain's learned, well, you interact with other stuff, so why not this stuff? Right in. He said, can you explain how I can figure out what my beliefs are and how to change or challenge them? So there's an exercise in my book where you just explore kind of like just writing out like what are the things I believe. You can do that also just by going about your life. And at first, what I always encourage people with this is to just be open to the possibility that you have beliefs, and two, that you could have other beliefs. Because we so often approach it as like, this is just like, this is reality. These are just facts. This is the way things are. And so at first, simply the openness that there could be other ways of doing things. That when you place a judgment on something, that's about a bunch of beliefs. That's not a fact. And so at first, just exploring that. And so exploring actions, like giving yourself a week. So I would describe it as a festival of curiosity. So you give yourself a week where you say like, look, I'm just going to be open this week to considering what my beliefs are. So when I do something, I'm going to consider like, oh, why did I do that? And then so you gather up, a list of beliefs, and then you look at what do you want to be doing in life, and then you look at that list of beliefs and consider, okay, which beliefs on here are not going to be helpful to me, and which beliefs would be more helpful. And then Based on the beliefs that would be more helpful, you identify actions. So you say, okay, which actions would reflect these beliefs? And then you look at exercises to start practicing those actions because changing beliefs is going to follow actions. We can't tell our brain. Talking to our brains is like talking to a llama. It does not understand English. What it does understand, though, are actions. Like if I give the llama carrots, I don't know if llamas like carrots. Do you like carrots? Then it will start to act differently. But if I shout at it and I do bad things to it, then it will be like, oh, this is a bad person, and then it will act accordingly. So, what are the actions that will align with the beliefs that would be more useful to you? Elena. And so, actually, here's a great example. You said, I realize now just how much my goals and just my habits have been based on me worrying about what other people may think of me. Not sure how to deal with this. But it's actually exactly what we were just talking about. So starting to say, okay, what would be useful beliefs? So often a belief we hold on to that's not helpful is that it's really important what other people think about me. And we do a whole bunch of actions to manage that. And because we do all of those actions, the brain really starts to worry. It's like, oh no, like the worst thing that could happen would be somebody judging us. So one of the ways I used to teach my brain that every morning when I'd be getting ready, I'd just be constantly thinking about like, oh, that I need to cover that up, or oh, what are people going to think if I look this way or if I wear that? So every morning, an hour of practice time teaching my brain, all we have to do today is control what other people think about us. So the brain very logically goes, oh no, if people judge us, that's bad. So to start working on this, you look at all of the actions you do that are teaching your brain that. And then those, like I was just talking about there, those are the actions that start to change. Style by stickers, that's great. You gave yourself compassion. Pom Pom Kitty. Yeah, you asked, how do we practice kindness towards ourselves? It's so easy to hate ourselves, and loving ourselves seems so difficult. So actually, that question you asked there is a question I would always ask somebody. So I would ask you, yeah, how are you going to practice kindness to yourself? It's a great thing to explore. And again, think about how you would practice kindness to somebody else. So what would that be like practicing kindness to you? Yeah, but like OCD and Tourette's go together. Yeah, like you said there, like you described it perfectly. You said so Tourette's is about the urgent need to do some physical body move, while OCD is about the same need, but to do some thinking. Yeah, and so there's all sorts of exercises, right? Exploring having that urgent need, and then yeah, do we want to do something differently? And exploring things like that. No Tomorrow. I know of Nassim Nicholas Taleb, but I have not read Anti-Fragile. Oh, Dean, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope, yeah, take care of yourself. Oh, here you're explaining actually No Tomorrow. Great, thank you. Said it basically specifies that biological systems are designed to be anti-fragile. The mind, for example, and if someone tries to control it, it strengthens rather than weakens. I find this concept really pertinent and related to your video on intrusive thoughts. The brain bringing larger and larger gifts, intrusive experiences. Yeah, yeah. Oh, maybe I'll check out the book. There, I think looking at, so what Taleb looks at are often like large systems. I find is really relevant to navigating, yeah, things like mental health and fitness. These are like systemic patterns and learning how to handle systems. So that's why sometimes I refer to it as brain physics, which sounds like what he's getting at there with the mind being anti-fragile. Yeah, like there are just ways that the brain operates or the mind operates, whatever we want to call it. And part of it's just learning how the system operates. And so we don't have to get in this fight with the system. We can actually understand how the system operates and then basically game the system. Edgardo said, how do you deal with intrusive thoughts? So I find actually the dealing with intrusive thoughts is usually what's causing them. Because if we hate on a thought and we're like, I've got to fix this and control it, um, as No Tomorrow was just explaining, then of course the brain gives you more and bigger intrusive thoughts. So you can keep chasing that fix. And so, yeah, often wanting to deal with intrusive thoughts is not the solution, but actually the problem. So I'd look at that. Like, why hate on intrusive thoughts? Why judge intrusive thoughts? Why want to fix and control that? And what would you like to give that time and energy to instead? Oh, King Kirby. Yeah, you can show out the non-judgment workout plan. Enjoy. Let me know how that goes. One of the things after people go through the non-judgment workout plan, it's so useful to, because you'll see there it gives you a bunch of options what to practice. Once you practice those, make sure you then give yourself, say, a week of exploring non-judgment around yourself. Mm-hmm. But yeah, after you're done too, yeah, leave a review there on the toolkit store. I'd love to hear, yeah, what you discover on your adventure. Inner City Hoops, thank you. Christian said, my fear changes subject, but the main fear remains the same. I'm doing all the best not to get trapped in compulsions. When does my brain stop with bringing up new obsessions? Yeah, so I find that the brain will stop bringing up new obsessions when we welcome whatever it'll throw up. Yeah, like I don't struggle with intrusive thoughts anymore, but that was about welcoming any intrusive thought. And if my brain threw up a thought now, it wouldn't matter. It was about cutting out all those compulsions that I was doing that were fueling them. Like we were talking earlier with, teaching our brains that it's important if people judge us, and that's the worst thing. So it's really useful to look at with intrusive thoughts, what compulsions are we doing to fuel this? Because yeah, if I'm doing things like I was describing there, if I'm doing things every day, I'm like taking an hour every morning to control what other people think about me. Of course, the brain is going to throw up intrusive thoughts about horrible things I could do that people would judge me for. Because I taught it that the worst possible thing is someone judging us. So my brain is only trying to help me. It's going, oh, yeah, like we don't want people to judge us. Okay, here are all the horrible things that could happen that would really make people hate us. Brain's just trying to help. But that started with me teaching it that that was the most horrible thing that we must control. So it's important to cut out that stuff. It's also important to cut out the compulsions we're doing in our heads around intrusive thoughts and starting to see that intrusive thoughts are compulsions because the brain is just throwing up stuff. The brain could throw up a thought that, I don't know, I'm not going to eat pizza later today. And I could be like, oh no, that's terrible. What does that mean? Why am I having this thought? When are these thoughts going to stop? But that's because that's me judging that, right? And you probably noticed, I mean, everybody, if we went through everybody here and talks about like, what are your intrusive thoughts about? We'll see some similarities, but they're going to be different from person to person. And you're going to see somebody else mention an intrusive thought and you'd be like, oh, why are you worried about that? I don't care about that. But that's just it. Intrusive thoughts are about your beliefs and your judgments and the things you care about. We can cut out those compulsions around those thoughts, just like we could easily start doing compulsions around other topics. And if we did, then yeah, we would have intrusive thoughts about those topics. So it's going to be about cutting out the compulsions. Little Miss Beats, enjoy dinner. Thank you for stopping by. And Squids, you're going to have dinner too. Enjoy. Katerina, you said you reached out over Instagram and my website. I'll take a look in my email and see if I can find the message. Sorry for not getting back to you. Yeah, Trev. Yeah, I said realizing that ruminating was my main compulsion changed my life. I had no idea that ruminating wasn't normal. Exactly. It's so useful to learn. You don't have to be talking in your head all the time. It's so wonderful to just yeah. And I was noticing this the other day, and just in general, I just it's so enjoyable to be able to walk and just walk and enjoy seeing the world and being present and not just spinning the wheels in our heads. Higher IQ than you. He said, why do you think people with OCD avoid thinking during recovery? It's because the fear of relapse. Yeah, can you explain what you mean by avoid thinking during recovery? Um, because I mean, people generally think. I've never met anybody who doesn't think. It's possible. Elena, yeah, enjoy working on that and exploring. Buzz, thank you for enjoying the video. Thanks for stopping by. Isabel, so there's an example of a belief. You said, my brain will never stop until I'm at the end. It's it could be useful to look at the actions that are fueling the thinking. It's very possible for the brain to sit quietly, but it does require us making changes too. Muruga-san, thank you. Thanks for stopping by. I said, how do I align myself with my values once I'm on the path to recovery? Yeah, I find it's even helpful, like even setting aside the idea of recovery and looking at, yeah, how do I just want to give my time and energy to the things I want to do in life? And then that is that alignment. And so one of the things that really helped me was just being really intentional in any situation. Like really saying, okay, I'm about to go and do this thing, like maybe just have a conversation with somebody, or I'm just going to go to the grocery store. How do I want to do that? What do I want to give? So, like in the past, going to the grocery store, I would, on the way there, actually choose something to ruminate about. So be like, oh, I've got to, walk for 20 minutes. That's wasted time. What am I going to like fix and control in my head? I didn't realize that was just a compulsion that was teaching my brain to ruminate about other things. So it was really useful to say, well, I'm walking to the grocery store, so I'm just going to walk to the grocery store and let's practice that. And keeping my brain with me, just walking. Or going into a conversation, considering what do I want to give here? Like maybe I just want to give my attention. I want to listen mindfully. Okay, let's practice that. And you might do this in any situation. You might look at a larger period of time, like say a month or something. Like, what is my intention for this month? What do I want to explore? Doing that helped me around a lot of food compulsions I had, like where I used to avoid all sorts of foods. So I helped to say, okay, this month I'm really going to explore cooking this food for myself. And I'm going to do this like every day of the week for a month. And it was great to explore things like that. And then, yeah, you can also do it for like a day. Just being like, yeah, what is my intention today? What do I want to align my actions with throughout the day? And then anytime a situation comes up, like some kind of unexpected, difficult experience or uncertainty inside of us, we can come back to those intentions. Be like, okay, I see this thing trying to pull me off over here, but I identified that today, here are the three things I want to give. So, how do I give one of those things in this situation? And that's how we keep it on that path that's really aligned with our actions. Mm. Eduardo, so you said, so I should just ignore thoughts I don't like or just let them be. Mm, so I would even take it in a different direction. I would look at like what do you actually want to spend your time and energy on? Because it not putting the focus on thoughts. Like it's not that, okay, like what do I do with thoughts? Right? Like that we want to put our actions and what we value at the center. What do we want to keep? There'll be all sorts of experiences. Like, yeah, I don't know if anybody could just hear that there were a bunch of bangs. It sounded like somebody just set off some fireworks, even though it's in the middle of the day. We could give all of our attention to that right now and be like, what do we do if a sound goes off during the stream? But we actually don't have to, right? That just, like right now, it takes us away from what we actually want to be doing. No, like there can be sounds and we give our attention to the thing we want to be doing. It's not like I'm not ignoring it. I'm not, doing anything particular around it. It's just, yeah, there's experiences. Just like a bug could fly by or a bird could make a noise, a car could make a noise. Thoughts are just like sounds. Or just like if we're walking down the street and there's trash in the street, we don't have to like do a thing with it. It's just part of the environment. And we can keep the focus on, where we're going. Marzina, just reading through you have a two-parter question here. Actually, so I didn't see, do you have a question about that? So higher IQ than you. So you said, sorry if you didn't get it. I did not get it. But then you said, I don't know why for me personally, every time I brainstorm, I always feel like I'm doing a compulsion. Okay, and so do you have a question about that? Lena Narina. Oh, well, thank you for joining the live. I'm glad you're finding it helpful. I said, I sometimes find that social media makes me excessively paranoia. How do I stop the paranoia? Hmm. So I struggled with paranoia. Like I used to, I have a video on it, right? There's a video if you go on my channel on paranoia. I can't remember exactly what it's called. Maybe recovery in paranoia, something like that. And there's a couple things to look at here. So one, starting to recognize the delusions in the paranoia was really useful. So because I just believed them. Like when I went to therapy, I didn't even bring it up because to me they were just facts. Like people were watching me, I was going to be attacked. I had to do all of these things to control it. So part of it's just starting to recognize, oh yeah, again, this is like coming to the beliefs thing. Like, oh, I have all these beliefs about something. Like, is that useful to me? So there's that part. But then also it was about cutting out the compulsions. So with social media, for example, it's a great way it can be to practice being our authentic selves and sharing ourselves in a way that's true to us. So I find it's really important with social media because sometimes you'll see a lot of talk about like social media being fake, or people may think, oh, I've got to act a particular way to control what's happening. I just grabbed my llama because it was falling over. It's really helpful to us to be ourselves in the world in general, in person, online, whatever. Because if we're not, of course, we're going to worry about all sorts of things because we're already doing lots of controlling. So cutting out the compulsion is going to be about saying, like, here's how I want to act. And I'm going to do that in a way that expresses what I want to express, gives what I want to give. And yeah, the brain is going to throw up the usual anxieties and uncertainties and fears. And so, yeah, it's going to be balancing both, I find, with paranoia. One, seeing through the delusions. Two, cutting out any compulsions and bringing it back to what we value giving. Writing. It said, sometimes I have contradicting critical thoughts to do with my very own worth as a human being. And to realize that I can just let them be there and not engage or analyze them is insane. Exactly. But there you see beliefs. Like often we have all sorts of weird beliefs around like we have to earn value or worth. And it's so useful to look at like, well, what's a more useful belief? recognizing that we just are inherently valuable. We don't have to do anything to earn value. We don't have to. So often we're acting like we have this bad accountant in our head who's like adding up, oh, you did 10 bad things and you only did 4 good things. So you're like, you're in debt as a bad person. Now you have to go and earn being a good person. We're so often being like, oh, I don't deserve this. And oh, I can't be kind to myself because of this. Or we're actually avoiding living our lives because we think, oh, well, I shouldn't do that because I did this thing. I have to like compensate by like wrecking my life. So many unhelpful beliefs like that. And so, yeah, really thinking about when it comes to your worth and your value, what would be more helpful beliefs to hold? It can be really helpful. And then looking at, okay, based on that, what are the actions that reflect that? What are the actions that reflect that you're valuable? Refresh the mesh. So, does everyone have intrusive thoughts? So, everybody has thoughts. But whether you engage in compulsions around them or not is that varies from person to person. And because yeah, it's useful to see like sometimes when people talk about intrusive thoughts, they'll say like they'll point to research, like research that has showed those thoughts about violent images, horrible things happening, uncertainties, etc. That everybody has them, and so they'll say like, look, everybody has intrusive thoughts. That's not totally accurate because it's only an intrusive thought if you're like, this shouldn't be here. And so it's those compulsions that cause the distress. Everybody has thoughts, but not everybody hates on them and tries to control them and avoid them. And starting to see that it's actually that hating and judging and controlling and avoiding that creates the distress because we're like, this shouldn't be here. And then it's there. And then we're like, oh no, what are we going to do? So that not everybody does. And it's so useful to recognize that's the actual problem. Because there's nothing wrong with thoughts. The brain is just a thought organ. It's like your stomach. Instead of gas and shit, your brain creates thoughts. So it's starting to see, oh, like that's just the thing it does. I don't have to be like every day, oh no, I had a burp. What's that mean? Oh no, I farted. What does that mean about me? I am a horrible person. But we do that with thoughts. And the brain is just an organ trying to digest the world. I don't know if everybody's seen the world, but it is not very digestible. So it is understandable that your brain has a tough time passing that. Marzina said, it's so hard to stop the compulsions because they give instant calmness. And if I don't complete them, it creates so much anxiety. What should I do at that moment? How to stay focused and not give in? So yeah, it really helped me to start to connect things together. So yeah, you could say it gives instant calmness, but can you start to see the problems that's creating? Because it's about, for me, it really helped me to recognize, oh, like me choosing instant calmness is wrecking my life. Whereas if I am going to push into a difficult feeling, that's actually going to be better for happiness in the long term. So it's starting to make that switch to valuing long-term health and happiness instead of short-term relief, which only leads to long-term destruction. And starting to connect those together, like in my book, the example I give is the guy who says he likes jumping in the water, but he hates getting wet. And so starting to connect those, like if you don't like the intrusive thoughts, it does not make sense to keep on doing the compulsions because chasing that relief, right? Because it's like an addiction. So every time you chase that high of instant calmness, you're choosing the withdrawal. So it really helped me to start to say, look, if I don't like the withdrawal, I don't like like I used to have all sorts of really violent intrusive thoughts, like horrible things happening to other people. So I had to be like, look, if I don't like experiencing that, it does not make sense for me to keep doing the compulsions that cause that. Yeah, doing a compulsion provides short-term relief, but look at what it's doing. And so really starting to make that connection. Oh, I don't want to keep wrecking my yeah, really I was like wrecking my life long term just for some short brief moments of mistaken relief. Yeah, refresh the mesh. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I see you asked a further question, but yeah, hopefully that explained it. Yeah, it is the analyzing and obsessing, like you mentioned. Penny said, I'm afraid that people will misunderstand me. Any tips? Yeah, get misunderstood. Love yourself. You said, am I familiar with a person named Teal Swan? No. I mean, a teal swan would be a nice color of swan, probably, right? Yeah, Isabel. But there you see, so you mentioned the thoughts not stopping earlier, but then you just did the thing and you caught it, but you're just doing the thing that is keeping the thoughts going, right? The ruminating on like, I could not see a doctor about the cancer I'm concerned about. It would bring up anxiety, but I might feel better. But like even just spending any time on that stuff, right? What if you don't have to spend any time on it? What if you could spend your time on other things? XX, I won't be able to pronounce your username. Why does harm OCD feel like it's an urge and you're about to do something bad? How to deal with it? So it could help to see, like, it sounds like you're like judging, oh, if it's an urge that means things. And so it could really help to start seeing that actually it's not about the harm thoughts, it's about those compulsions you're doing, like checking feelings, checking what it means, and things like that. I have a video on my YouTube channel on getting over like violent, intrusive thoughts. So I would suggest cutting that out, or I mean, checking that out, and then cutting out the compulsions. Oh, Martina, you're welcome. Refresh the mesh. He said, what physical responses can you get? I have a lot of headaches and tension in the left side of my head and neck. Is there a reason to why it's all left side tension and pain from this pure OCD? So something, refresh the mesh. You just cured your pure OCD because what you just did there is what's known as a reassurance compulsion. And so it can really help to start to see the um, the checking and the controlling. Those are compulsions. And so yeah, I mean, if there's pain on the left side, hey, there's pain on the left side. But what do you want to give your time and energy to while experiencing that pain? How do you want to take care of yourself? What do you want to give to yourself? Oh, I love yourself. Thanks for sharing about that. Yeah, Isabel, it it helped me really to look at like seeing like the ruminating and the checking, like that was the hard work. And seeing like, hey, like this is just like all of the time, like, oh, I've got to control this big fear. Oh, I've got to control death is exhausting. And then that just takes us away from life. And so letting it be easy, right? And like noticing, oh, I'm about to go and do all this work. Well, what do I want to just allow myself to go and do instead and let it be easy? Yeah, Ryden. This is a great exercise. You said, I've learned to engage with thoughts that make me feel insecure and inferior. So I've avoided taking up space. But now I do what a confident person would do while feeling extremely insecure. It's so great to notice. We can just go and do those things. He said, it's scary and it feels like I'm being fake because my behavior is extremely contradicting to how I feel, think. It's a weird experience. Yeah, often it's about faking it till you make it. But also seeing like there's like, because we were talking about beliefs, there's a great example of a belief. We believe I should feel confident. And if I don't have this right feeling, then somehow what I'm doing is fake. Like so often we're trying to have this perfect alignment between feeling and action. And it's just starting to recognize like that's not a useful belief. That's why I always talk about looking at how do you do a thing well and have any thought or feeling. Because we'll get into like, ooh, this thought or this feeling is a contamination. And so, oh, it's wrong to go and do this action while having this contaminated feeling. But actually, no, like the brain, just being an organ, it's going to have lots of thoughts and feelings, and we can have any of those while we go and do the action well. And so I always talk about making cookies. Right? If you feel bad, if you feel like a bad baker, well, you make the cookies, you follow the recipe and you make the cookies well. If you feel like a good baker, well, you make the cookies, you're still going to follow the same recipe and make the cookies well. And so, yeah, doing just like you're doing it, bringing to those actions and then doing them. Yeah, Rena Narina. Yeah, he said I was doing around 20 hours a week on Zoom. So after a few months, I think I was developing Zoom dysmorphia. Do you think Zoom dysmorphia and OCD is connected? Well, so I see like all mental health is just a bunch of compulsions. And then depending on the particular compulsions, we give it a different label. But yeah, like it's the same checking, if we're checking and judging how we look on Zoom and wanting to control that in a particular way, of course, we're going to start to doubt it and we're going to start to have intrusive thoughts about it, just like anything. So, yeah, it's useful to cut it out. Yeah, go on Zoom and be like, hey, here's the thing I want to give. And I don't have to check or control some other thing. Like I do way more than 20 hours of Zoom a week, plus like all the live streams and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, no, and it's got to be about what do I want to give to people, and it doesn't. Sometimes I guess there I could look at myself right now, but I have really no idea what I look like on Zoom or live streams. Mm. Sasha, and I see you said that the rumination again and intrusive thoughts are increasing. Please suggest a cure. Oh, I'm sorry you're struggling with this, but it could really help. Well, so rumination, that's an action. So it's useful to look at, okay, I'm cutting out the rumination. But yeah, intrusive thoughts, like trying to find a cure to intrusive thoughts, it can really help to see like that is the problem. XX, you are, yeah. So again, no, like actually, this is what I mean, because you're demonstrating like the judgment, right? Like thinking like, no, like, oh, you don't get it. Like this means something, right? Like, I mean, there's a response in the body, like something is about to happen, a rush of adrenaline. It feels like you're going to lose control. And so this is exactly what I'm talking about with those judgments. Like, oh no, this means something. And but you touched on what is often the big fear, like that we fear losing control. And so we start checking, am I going to lose control? And then because we're checking, we start to find things, of course, and then we start to attach meanings to it and judgments to it, and then react even more to it, which is, yeah, gonna make your adrenaline start pumping. It's exactly the same thing that happens with panic attacks, right? We don't want to lose control. We start checking. Oh no, am I losing control? Oh, that doesn't feel right. That shouldn't be here. Oh no, now I'm anxious about that. Oh no, I am losing control. And we tickle a panic attack right out of the butterflies in our guts. But it's starting to see that's a bunch of compulsions. Mm. No tomorrow. So you touched on something often that we're afraid of, right? Just like it's the type of harm, fear, compulsion. He said, any advice on how to politely decline an attempt at a romantic approach, be it live or by message? I always have a huge fear of hurting the other person or creating a cringe-worthy situation if I were to see them again. And so it's that making it okay. Yeah, you may hurt them. It may be cringeworthy. But coming back to like, what do you want to share? Like, what's honest, and being able to express yourself. Because usually it's actually when we get caught up in the controlling and trying to manage somebody else's feelings that we actually really create a painful experience. Oh, love yourself. Those mango lassi donuts are amazing. Like a pillow of sunshine. Yep, exactly. Refresh the mesh. Said, I believe it's not the theme that is the problem. It's just intrusive thoughts. And the ones that make you the most anxious get sticky. Exactly. And it's even really useful to recognize that because fundamentally, it's not about the thought at all. The brain is just throwing up something that's going to make us feel bad, which we're then going to react to with the compulsions. So it's going back to that idea of it being like any addiction. The thoughts are going to feel bad. We're going to have an uncomfortable experience because we judge it. We're like, that shouldn't be here. Oh no, now I feel wrong. And then we fix the feeling. So fundamentally, it's useful to start looking at it's not about thoughts, it's about feelings and learning how to sit with uncomfortable feelings. And so a lot of the times the exercises to work on, people are looking at ERP are not actually going to be about, exposing yourself to the topic of the thought. You're probably going to find a lot more benefit from working on uncomfortable physical experiences. Because when we show the brain, hey, yeah, I can have this uncomfortable physical experience, the brain loses that trick to get you into the compulsions. Yeah. So XXUR, yeah, really common fear just brought up, comes up all the time. I used to struggle with it. I was talking about it recently. Probably maybe the last live stream we did here on YouTube was on a balcony, really high up, and or maybe it was over on Twitch. But I was talking about that, yeah, because I used to struggle with that. I wouldn't go out on balconies. So you said if you sit at the balcony and have an intrusive thought that you're going to jump and your heart is pumping and you're shaking. So from what I understand, you just ride it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like there is a feeling there. And what do you want to do? Like I just want to sit here right now. Like that's why I went out on the balcony. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna sit on the balcony and I'm gonna do a live stream. This is what I want to give. And that's how we start to work on that fear of losing control. The antidote to the anxiety about losing control is to practice being ourselves. And so what I would look at there when anybody is coming up with this, what I always encourage people to look at is not actually doing exercises around the fear, because then you're still confirming to your brain that you're going to put your life on hold to chase after some brain stuff. And that's the very thing the brain is afraid of, that something in your head is going to make you lose control. So, what I always encourage people to look at is how are you spending time and energy on your life on the things you really care about? How are you practicing being yourself? And so it's even like now that we're onto this, like noticing like your username, right, is not your name. And like I bring up stuff with like this with people when they run into this fear, because you can start to look at all of the things you're doing in your life and really look at, are you being yourself in the things you spend time and energy on? If you're not, it's just totally natural your brain is afraid of you not being yourself. Because it goes, look, you're not being yourself in all of these ways. Oh no, what if we are not ourselves in these other ways and we lose control? So, really starting to look throughout your life at how you can be yourself, because that is what really starts to show us, hey, yeah, like anything that comes up in my head, anything fear I have around me, I'm going to practice being myself. Mm. So Abjad, yeah. So these thoughts too, you sit like you get thoughts. If you do X, then Y would happen, or if you do X, Y would happen, and so on. How do you deal with such thoughts? Again, like dealing with it is like not a thing we have to do, because it's that pattern you're describing there just is the compulsion. It is the magical thinking compulsion. So there's a chapter in my book on this, on the like exactly as you described, the if X then Y pattern. And the solution to it is to recognize that if X is X, if a thing happens, a thing happened. The end. I'm glad everybody is craving bagels. Bagel, bagel, bagel. You said a few years back at my aunt and uncle's place in New York City, I practiced sitting on balconies and eating bagels. What a beautiful place to eat bagels. Mm. So, Manuka-san, one, you said, how do I deal with moral dilemmas? But what I would look at, there's like that actually judging it as a moral dilemma is because, for example, with what you should, I wouldn't agree that's a moral dilemma. And so that's where you get to start to look at those beliefs and stuff we have. Because, yeah, if you judge, oh, this is a moral dilemma and I have to have the right decision on it, then of course that'll create a lot of anxiety. But perhaps it's not. No, tomorrow we do feel uncertain when dealing with other people's feelings. So it can be great to give ourselves that compassion, right? Oh, of course I feel uncertain about this. Of course I don't want to hurt somebody. Andrea, thank you. Thanks for stopping by. Ah, Georgie, you said, what is the difference between an existential crisis and existential OCD? It's just which Reddit forum you post about, post your existential questions in. Yeah, both of them. It just, it's so useful to recognize like so many of these labels we stick on things are just random labels made up by people. They're not like actual factual illnesses or things that exist. They're just ways of articulating experiences. And sometimes how we articulate that can help us. Like, oh, okay, I'm struggling with this, and here's how I'm going to address it. But keeping it in that context, it's useful if it helps us understand how we want to move forward. But if we're caught up in like, ooh, is it this or is it that? Then it's not that helpful because, yeah, they're all just made up terms. Everybody, looks like we're coming to the end of questions. So we'll wrap things up. If anybody's been watching and you have a question you've been sitting on, now is the time to get it up there. And otherwise, we'll wrap things in because it is probably for some people around lunchtime. I know I'm gonna go eat lunch and fuel being myself. Maybe it's dinner time. We had some people who went to make dinner earlier, which is also a wonderful opportunity to fuel ourselves. I'm gonna go to the market. I just got to a new place, so I find it's because moving around all the time, not really you know I guess I would say, yeah, wherever I am is where I'm at home. So I find it's really important when moving into a new place to make it at home. And so part of that's like getting food, getting things in the place. And so I'm going to go to the market this afternoon and get great produce and yeah, probably a lot of nuts and stuff to make. I like to make my own granola. This is a great place to find all sorts of nuts and grains and things like that. And cocoa nibs, just pure cocoa, like not even nibs. They're still like pure, just dried cocoa beans. Amazing. So I'm gonna get some things to just take care and make my home a home. Oh, Rina, it's 1 a.m. You're in Korea. Well, you'll get to, yeah, sleep well and rest. Everybody, thank you for stopping on by. Thank you, everybody who donated today. I really appreciate it. It really helps with, yeah, continuing this work and making these spaces so we can talk about our brains and, more importantly, though, talk about how we're going to do the things we want to do in life while navigating this weird experience of having a human brain. Miles, why are you moving around so much, Maria? Yeah, I mean, part of it, I think the best example I was recently, because I was moving around a lot, I was just recently staying at a place that's built around permaculture principles. And so if you're familiar with permaculture, often we associate with agriculture, but it's a set of principles that's much broader, really, for making any kind of project. You can use permaculture principles because they're about understanding the environment, understanding the community, and then building in a way that supports the community, right? Because so often when we create things in the world, it's more about how do we destroy things? How do we build something? We don't really think about what happens to it after. We see the environment and communities as really things we often take from. And so permaculture is about really looking at how do we create in the world in a way that supports the world and makes the world better. And one of the things At this particular place, so it was called Kanua. So it's an eco lodge in Colombia. And one of the things they did when they were building it was they found some land where they could build, but then they didn't start building right away. They spent 2 years just understanding how the water flows, how the animals and the insects interact with that piece of land. And right now, I would say in the work I'm doing, so I've kind of, you know, doing the same kind of mental health and fitness work I do always, and, supporting our community and building our community around the world, sharing these tools so people can navigate to recovery, but also then looking at the big changes and challenges ahead for the world, as it navigates both climate change and political upheaval and so on. And I would say why I'm moving around a lot right now is because I'm looking at how the water flows and to inform, yeah, the work I'll do in the future, and the work, I hope to do, continue doing, understanding and supporting how people change and how societies and communities change. I think it's important to first understand how the water flows, and then we see what's useful, and how to support that in a way that makes sense. And so, yeah, right now there is a lot of moving around, and seeing how things flow. And then that will inform the work in the future. Oh, Julia, yeah, you said you're late, but you lost your dash hound of 12 years this week. You said you're still grieving, but I found that I want to channel it to do great things. I adopted a puppy and I hope to give her the best life possible. Oh, Julia, yeah. Enjoy sharing that with your puppy. And yeah, much compassion to the grief and pain, for losing your great friend. Raideen, thank you. Yeah, thank you for stopping by and sharing. Rocky Fighter. I'm not sure I understand your question. Sometimes, yeah, you may talk to yourself in your head, but also it's about looking at whether that's useful or just more of the compulsions. Becky said, popping in to say that I've been taking the advice on actions, just doing, living as though you don't have OCD, just doing, especially when you don't feel like it, and it works. Being yourself just works. Hey, Becky, enjoy being yourself and just growing that practice. Yeah, it is. We really want to be ourselves. Lisa, you said how to deal right with loneliness. The like part of it is we may be lonely, and giving ourselves like that is a thing we can feel, but also if we want to build relationships, that's also something we can do. And then it's about looking at how we want to build those relationships, but not because we want to get rid of some feeling or control some feeling, but looking at what we want to give to others. But also with loneliness, it could be an opportunity to look at what you want to give to yourself. I don't know if you caught it earlier. We were talking about being a good colleague to yourself. And so often we're such a horrible person to ourselves. And so it makes sense we'll feel very lonely, because if the only person we're spending time with is that horrible colleague who's always mean to us, we're not going to enjoy that. So it's also really useful to look at what do you want to give to yourself? Whatever, it helped me so much to see whatever I was looking for to get from other people, I needed to start giving that to myself. So that too, in my relationships with others, those relationships can be about what I want to give to them rather than trying to get something. XXUR, so how do you recognize compulsions? Thank you for the kind words too. With compulsions, yeah, so I would even, it's useful to take a step away, because we can start getting into, like, compulsions are this type of contamination. We have to perfectly clean them all away. So even taking a step back from that and looking at, well, how do I do things well? So it's like I was talking about cookies there. How do I make the cookies well? So, because If I go into the kitchen and I'm like, ooh, what are all the compulsions I could do here? Oh, I could hit myself in the face with a frying pan, and oh, I could burn the cookies, and oh, I could, I don't know, put rocks in them. Like it would be there'd be an exhausting list of compulsions to just terrible things that are going to create terrible experiences. Instead, though, it's useful to look at how do I make the cookies well. And in making the cookies well, you'll get to remove all of the compulsions, but that's not the focus. It's on what we want to keep. So yeah, I would really encourage everybody, shift the focus of mental health work to what do you want to keep. So the most recent video on my YouTube channel is about that. So maybe check that out. Inner City Hoops. So what do you think of living alone? I'm moving out this fall. I'm really excited about it, but also questioning how it will all work out. Yeah, so I live alone, and I've also lived with other people. And I find, like I was kind of talking about there with going to get the groceries, like making the place feel at home, I find it super important to have a plan for when you move out on your own. How are you going to make that place feel like a home? And how are you going to be a good roommate to yourself? Because so often if we're living with somebody, we may act a particular way. But then if we're living alone, we may like let a lot of things just drop or not take care of the place. But then we won't enjoy that. And so really starting to look at, yeah, what are the things that are you're really going to enjoy? What would you really enjoy if you were living with somebody? And then giving that to yourself. So yeah, being a good roommate to yourself becomes super important. Oh, Lone Star. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad this has been useful on your journey with your mental health. Yeah, I'm glad you found a lot of tools here that you can apply. I hope, yeah, you continue to apply these and explore them on your adventures. Maybe, yeah, everyone, how about we wrap things up there? That's a good note to end it on. Thank you so much, everybody, for stopping by, just being here, but also sharing from your experiences of having one of these squishy urge blobs. I know the alpacas and the llamas all wish you well and enjoy it out there. Hey, it is tough dealing with a brain, but it's doable, especially when we put things at the center that we want to keep. So it's not about these things we want to fix and control. It's not about defeating all the enemies on the battlefield. It's about, yeah, what do I want to build in this world? What do I want to give to myself? What do I want to give to others around me? What do I want to give to my community and build? And then just bringing it to that. So, yeah, enjoy that, everybody. Thank you so much for coming by. And we'll see you. So, we'll do a stream over on Twitch on Wednesday evening. Maybe talk a bit about the ERP exercises we've been exploring there and other brain fun. All right, everybody. Until then, thank you so much, everybody. I will see you soon. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. Bye.